Today, I'm excited to have Emre Ertan on the podcast. Emre is the co-founder and co-CEO of Cenoa, a digital dollar account that helps users and businesses overcome cross-border payment challenges. They do this by enabling secure and instant access to digital dollars with significantly lower conversion fees. Prior to Cenoa, he was both the chief product officer and chief technology officer at Getir, where he started the product management team and scaled the engineering team from 80 to 400 people. At Slice Technologies and Unroll.me, he led initiatives that increased the user base by 6x while reducing the acquisition cost by 60%. He's also a Stanford MBA graduate with over 15 years of building consumer technology products. It was really great to have Emre on the podcast because I think 2025 is really the year you're going to see stablecoins start to enable a whole bunch of payment solutions that not only affect businesses but affect consumers as well. And Sanoa is just a great example of what this technology can enable. All that compounded with the fact that Emre is just an expert in his field and has built so many great products in the history of his career. So with that said, I hope you enjoy the podcast. Hey Emre, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, David, and thank you for having me here.
Yeah, and super excited to talk about your experience and especially what you guys are building out here at Cenoa. But we always start the podcast starting from the beginning of the journey. So, what brought you to the world of technology and entrepreneurship?
Well, I think since the early days, like when I was a child, I always was fascinated by new ideas or by new inventions. And I always dreamed myself like growing up and coming up new ideas, maybe inventing some stuff. And especially in the field of technology, I think the passion started from the very early days.
Hmm.
And because of that, actually, I started my very first company and I actually got my first patent when I was still in college. I think it was sophomore year in college.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I mean the bug I guess started very early.
Yeah, for sure. But I think a lot of people, uh, they like, they like technology, like working on it. But I think specifically, what's very interesting is the entrepreneurship bug as well, right? Not only building in technology and making patents, but actually deciding to create your own business around it. So, like, where did that mesh of both worlds come in for you?
Yeah, I think I have a good anecdote for that too.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, back in time when I first started my first company was 2007 actually.
Hmm.
And back in time, I had a mentor in Turkey, and that actually, like, he was actually helping me with like learning about the business, new technologies, etc. And I grew up in a city called Mersin,
Hmm.
and which growing up, like, we didn't have a lot of business people around, like role models in technology. It's a small city in southern Turkey. But when I moved to Istanbul, I was fascinated by all this business people, these different businesses, technologies, etc. And then my mentor, back in time, told me that, oh, like, you have to actually go to US because you are passionate in this field and you have to visit Silicon Valley. And he actually arranged a summer session at Stanford and also a scholarship at Stanford summer session. And so in 2007, I visited Stanford for a summer session, and it was an amazing experience for me because it was a special summer. I don't know if you remember, but it's the summer of the original iPhone launched.
Right. Yes.
So I even actually saw Steve Jobs in the Palo Alto Apple store,
Oh, wow.
and it was an amazing experience for me. It was such a vibrant summer. Everyone's talking about new technologies. Everyone talking about the iPhone. Everyone talking about like how it will change. It will change the world.
Yeah.
And also, I was staying at a dorm at Stanford, and one of my roommates in the dorm started a business. He was still a teenager, but started a business and raised $1 million At
Right.
that time, it was unheard of to me. Like it's incredible. And growing up in
Yeah.
a small city in Turkey, like $1 million to a kid, like are they crazy? Like this, are these people crazy? Like how can they give so much money to a teenager? So it was mind
Right.
blowing for me. It was so unfamiliar. And back in time in Turkey, there was really no VC, really like a modern VC. There
Hmm.
was no angel investment. But the idea of starting something and building something with your friends, because that guy started this company and he was building products with his friends in the dorm. So I thought it was super cool.
Yeah.
And I experienced it, or I observed it, let's put it this way, at Stanford in 2007. And I said, well, going back to Turkey, I said two things. First, I definitely want to start my company because it's so
Right.
cool. And second, I definitely come back to Stanford because I loved Silicon Valley. I loved Stanford, and luckily both of them came true
Right.
eventually.
Yeah.
But right after I came back, I went to actually a conference. I was volunteering at a conference because I didn't have enough money to pay for the ticket, so I wanted to volunteer. And at that time, the big topic was like the new mobile technologies, etc. So like I got this idea and then realized there was nothing like that. So I got a patent for that and eventually started my first company right after that summer. But definitely the inspiration, I guess, originated from those times at Stanford at Silicon Valley.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know what? I think it really just hones into this notion that Silicon Valley is the melting of the smartest people in the world, the most ambitious
Yeah,
and smartest people in the world, right? And even for yourself, you made your way from a small town in Turkey and made it all the way there at Stanford, right? Which was probably something you didn't necessarily imagine would ever happen, right?
I
So
didn't. Yes, I didn't.
so truly, like I think that's it truly just goes back to the power of that place has, and it's really great to see how once you got there, the just the culture there, with people in dorms trying new things, trying new technologies, raising VC at unheard levels, for somebody who's fresh from Turkey, it's just all sucks you in, right? So
Right.
that's super, super interesting. And I think so of course that started a long and illustrious career. And one thing that's really interesting about your career is just how many different lines you've straddled, right? So today you're a co-CEO at Cenoa, but at Getir you were both a CPO and CTO, so more on the technical side
Right.
of things.
Right.
And how I guess for you, like, how have you been able to take on all these different roles and assume those different personas?
I guess one thing never changed. Like that's the passion for technology, is the passion for impact, and also entrepreneurship. I mean, even if I had professional roles, like when you look at my career, it's always something new. Like either like launching a new product, or like a small company growing very fast,
Mhm,
or like launching different. So it's I was always fascinated by this entrepreneurial path.
mhm,
And even if I was not the one who started all these companies, even if I was working professionally, still the entrepreneurial path, like the impact,
right,
attracted me the most. So that's how I end up having all these entrepreneurial roles,
mhm.
including Getir or Zoom or Slice.
Yeah, yeah, and, talking about Slice actually, so, you focused heavily on growth and user acquisition at Slice, right? And I think that's, it's very interesting where, on one level, you're focusing on building product and the technical architecture of how the product will look, and on the other side, you're talking about user and growth, right? Which is a whole different set of challenges. And so, specifically for the user and growth side, what do you think the key lessons you learned about scaling products were?
Yeah. You know, they say the first time entrepreneurs focus on product, second
Yeah.
time entrepreneurs focus on distribution.
Mhm.
It's very important. And I think initially, like early days, I think early 2000 or 2010s, people all talked about products, like the importance of a amazing product experience. You build, they will come. But with the huge waves of like VCs, huge waves of new companies, huge waves of products, etc., building an amazing product itself started to become not enough for the success. So distribution, understanding that was always very interesting for me. And I think at Slice, I got to experience amazing growth with both Slice, the consumer app, and also Slice actually acquired Unroll Me as well. And I also experienced amazing growth at Unroll Me. And even like I think with Unroll Me, we hit top 5 in the entire App Store at some point. So like definitely seeing that, and then we did a lot of. I learned a lot actually because we used to test a lot of different ideas. We tried a lot of different things, and then we were like fearless, like just testing everything, coming up with creative ideas. Shout out to all the Unroll Me team actually, and it was amazing. It was very fun also. Like and seeing that too was very good actually. Like it's really trying different technique, different ideas all the time, testing relentlessly, and then eventually adding up all these little pieces. Then you see
Hmm.
what, then you reach like amazing numbers. So that was very good experience for me. But yeah, as you said, like at Getir it was very different because at Getir was mostly technical
Yeah.
roles. Although I didn't initially plan to have that kind of a technical role, it kind of fell into my lap.
Yeah.
So that was a different story there. But I'm happy to talk
Yeah.
about it.
100%, 100%. And but I guess we can also transition talking a little bit about Cenoa. So some of the work you guys are doing right now. So just to give our users or sorry listeners some context, Cenoa allows people to open a real U.S. bank account in 3 minutes and get paid from platforms like e-commerce platforms in their own local currencies. And you guys have integrated with licensed partners like Transact, which is a UK FCA license, and you use USDC issued by Circle. And so, very, very interesting concept, especially as the world is becoming more and more global, right? And of course, we have different e-commerce. But people selling on e-commerce platforms, but they might not necessarily be located in the U.S., for example, what they're selling in the U.S. So I definitely see the massive, not only the massive growth that you guys have already had, but the massive potential in this starting
Exactly.
going forward. But I guess bringing it back, like what was the thought process behind this product and those specific technology choices?
Yeah. So let me identify briefly about like what we the inspiration or like what we wanted to achieve with Senoa. First of all, like we define Senoa almost a next generation PayPal or Wise
Hmm.
for emerging economies.
Hmm.
And we are talking next generation because we are combining the traditional fintech technologies with blockchain. And that's why we can actually operate efficiently in the countries and the places where Wise or PayPal cannot operate efficiently for one or another reason.
Right.
So that's how we define. And the inspiration behind Genoa came from our own problem in
Okay.
Turkey
Hmm.
because initially I started Cenoa with my co-founder. He's also a very good friend of mine from Stanford MBA. We went to MBA together, so we kept in touch. We were close friends. And by the end of 2021, we all decided that we would quit our jobs, and it's time for us finally, after 10 years, finally we will start something together.
Right.
And at that time, Turkey had a big devaluation crisis, and I had obviously savings in dollars. I have savings in Turkish liras, and my savings in Turkish liras cut by half in just
Right.
1 week because
Mm-hmm.
of the devaluation. And then at that time, it was crazy because even like when you are on a cab, in a taxi or a cab, like the cab driver before going home, he would actually go to a exchange shop and then buy dollars to protect himself from inflation. It
Oh
was
wow.
crazy days. And then we said, okay, we need to do something about it because there's an obvious problem, and the problem it's not only for Turkey, but the problem exists in many different emerging economies, and then we experience it from first hand, and we can do something to solve.
Right.
And the initial idea is like, what if we provide US dollar based, because US dollar is a strong currency, like a US dollar based products in a very accessible way to
Right.
people in emerging economies, because usually US dollar based products are either very expensive or restricted in these kind of countries. So what if we actually provide these products to people, to give them financial freedom so that they can protect themselves against inflation, or they can participate the world trade,
Yeah.
because those days, on the individual level, a lot of people lost money, lost their life savings because of
Yeah.
that. But at the other hand, in the business level, like business stopped trading for even a few days because of the currency crisis. So that's how we started Cenoa. That was the idea, like
Got it.
giving financial freedom back to people.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Yeah. I mean, it's for a lot of emerging economies in general, whenever tourists go, or even for people who are there locally, USD has always been a currency that's usually worked in those markets because of those factors like you mentioned, like inflation,
Yeah,
hyperinflation, and or devaluation. And it's really interesting to see, from your own experience, and of course you experienced that in Turkey, but it's happened in so many different locales, right? Like Venezuela is an example that's on top of
exactly.
mind. Or in Nigeria, you guys have seen explosive growth, right? With the
Exactly.
products, you guys have seen 50K signups in just a month, which is,
Exactly.
a lot. And so I guess, actually honing in on that Nigeria example, beyond, of course, those factors that you mentioned about emerging markets, and those financial factors. Like, is there anything specific that you think really drove that rapid adoption in that market?
There are a couple of things. First of all, again, like buying dollars in Nigeria back in time when we launched was very difficult,
Mm-hmm.
and the bank rate and the street rate were very different back in
I
time.
see. Got it.
And obviously people need the street rate, right? Because like that's actually the real rate, and for
Yeah.
that, like they need to carry a lot of cash around them. It's dangerous, etc. So a couple of things happened. The first, like when we launch the buy sell US dollars easily in just seconds product, so that was our initial product,
Mm-hmm.
definitely got huge interest. And actually a lot of people just started to refer themselves. Even one day, like we woke up and then we saw tens of thousands of signups, and then we said like, okay, like what's going on, like what happened? And then
Yeah.
we realized one of the influencers in Nigeria just picked up the story and then recorded a video himself, like without even telling us, hey, like I found this product, this is great, you guys should use it, etc. And then boom, like it was viral.
Right.
So it was, I guess, like definitely solving a big problem help. And then we realized in Nigeria there were other problems, like
Right.
for instance payments was a big problem, especially international payments, that people had difficulties even buying sneakers or airline tickets, even like paying for the AdWords accounts, etc. So
Right.
payments was then like we actually enabled cross-border payments, money transfers, etc. And then we realized getting paid from abroad was also a big problem, which
Hmm.
right now we are mostly focusing on that use case. I mean, the other use case is still going on, but like that's the latest use case. Is especially if you sell products or services to abroad, to countries like US or Europe, then getting payments is also very difficult. Especially they used to work with Mercury, the bank in the US, and Mercury stopped serving users in Nigeria. And
Oh
at that
wow.
time, that was a big
Yeah.
opportunity, obviously, for us, that like we launched our payout product for people in emerging economies, especially countries like Nigeria, Turkey, who sells products or services in the platforms like Amazon, Etsy, Shopify, Fiverr, Upwork, etc. You name it. Getting payments or getting payouts is either very difficult, in some cases impossible, or some cases very expensive.
Right.
And people can pay up to 8% or 9% fees just to get the payments that deserve. So right now, that's what we are solving actually. Right now, in our case, we launched the product. It's very easy.
Yeah.
We issue virtual US bank accounts to these people so that they get paid quickly and instantly. They see the payments in their Cenoa account and with just less than 1% fees.
Right. Right. And I think for a lot of our listeners who, some of them might have just grown up in the US and not necessarily known, like, these are probably very new problems that they haven't necessarily been exposed to because of course if we're in the US, money typically flows into the US, so getting
Mhm.
paid is not that much an issue, right? But when you have countries like Nigeria or Turkey for that in that example, it can get a little bit challenging, right? And I think what's really
I think,
interesting. Sorry.
yeah, I think I was going to say, I think the technology adoption works different ways for different technologies. And I
Yeah.
think for the internet adoption, the US and the Western world always the pioneer, right? But I think for the blockchain technologies, I think in the emerging economies we see more innovative and creative products, and it's kind of like the pioneers in
Yeah.
the blockchain technologies are actually in the emerging economies because that's the real pain point. That's the real pain point for the blockchain use cases. So that's why it's kind of, I want to say, in the financial industry, I think the emerging economies will have a leapfrog and have very innovative financial products through blockchain technology.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's some South American countries. I believe El Salvador with Bukalele, who transferred a lot of their fund into Bitcoin, right? And so I think there's some very very interesting, yeah, in the emerging markets, there's some very
Exactly.
interesting plays that are being done, in the financial world, and it's I think comes back to necessity, right? Like our listeners who are listening who are in the U.S. They never have to deal with any of these issues because they've been in the US.
Exactly.
But these emerging markets do, and that's why it's more the onus becomes more to solve those issues through new technologies. So there's more of a push to do that. And I don't think Nigeria is going to be the only country that you go this rapid growth with. Like I can think of
For
so
sure.
many off the top of my head who have these similar problems. So I'm sure you guys will experience that in those markets as well. Um,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we right now operate more than 40 countries, and then we reached around 500,000 users since then. So definitely, Nigeria is not the only one. And then we have
mhm.
many
and
different
and and I
opportunities.
mean, you guys are truly building like a global financial platform, right? And alluded to it. Turkey and Nigeria are worlds apart, but you guys have been seeing so much adoption, right? And it's currently available across 40 markets. Actually, I know we've only
That's
touched really on those two, but you guys are everywhere, right? And so when you think about expanding into new markets, right? How do you think about that? Because of course, although the problems are similar between Turkey and Nigeria, the execution of actually entering those markets, I assume, would be very different.
right. Exactly. Well, I mean, the way we look at it is we we are a customer focused and customer obsessed company actually,
Hmm.
and then we usually let our users or the user demand decide for us. So that's
Okay.
actually what happened. Why that was like why we started in Nigeria, for instance, because we were doing a lot of tests in many different markets, and then we realized that that was the market that drove the biggest growth, and that's how like we initially started from there, and then like we expanded to other markets. So usually, um, in our case, like the market has two folds. Like first, or the market expansion has two folds. First, like where are the real issues, pain points, and usually the users, when you do demand tests, etc., usually the users tell or show us that like what are the biggest pain points. And the second decision point is in which countries do these people interact with.
Right.
And then we realize, yes, like there are emerging economies like Nigeria, Turkey, like a Ghana, like maybe Egypt, Pakistan, etc. But at the same time, usually the finance is, especially cross-border finance, like happens in multiple countries. And then we realize that we need to be available in Europe, for instance, or we need to be available in the US. And therefore, like we ended up actually being available in 40 different countries. And that's why we ended up actually opening like a virtual US bank accounts, which is our latest product
Yeah.
in the equation, because that's where we see the biggest demand between the
Yeah.
US customers versus emerging market exporters, either product or service exporters.
Right. You know, maybe I'm making too much of a jump here, but and this is a little bit of my lack of understanding. But it really seems like you guys are building like a global bank in some ways, right? You're offering all these different financial products. You're offering virtual bank accounts. Like typically, banks are more regional focused, right?
Well, I mean, so first of all, we are a technology company, so it's
True.
not a
Yes.
it's not a
Yes.
bank,
That's fair.
like we, because we are not custodial.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we actually in either like we are available in 40 different countries, but like we don't have a bank account, like
Okay. Yeah.
zero bank accounts in all these countries. So we are a technology company, but in a way, we think we are building the future of banks, maybe, or the
Right.
next generation banks. And then uh, some people call it like a stable coin based neobanks, or some people call other things. But like I think the future of banking will be different, I think, and will be a mix between traditional finance versus blockchain technologies.
Yeah.
And then we see a lot of parallels between the blockchain adoption versus the internet adoption. And
Hmm.
in the internet adoption, when you think about it, the commerce was 100% offline.
Right.
And then eventually, when Amazon started, people think they're crazy. People
Yeah.
think that like no one will buy anything from internet, from online. And now, like we came to this decade, then almost 30% of all commerce now online. So it's
Hmm.
e-commerce. So we think it's gonna be a similar adoption where we will see the banks, of course, but at the same time, I think a big chunk of the financial system will be on blockchain, and that will be the future of finance, and that's what we are building.
Right, right. That makes sense. And coming back to the expansion and being across different markets, of course, I think one of the one of the biggest questions I have is like every market has a little bit different regulatory environments and different concerns. So
Agree.
like, how have you guys been addressing that as you've been expanding to
Yeah.
different markets?
Well, so we only so to be able to launch, or to be able to launch in all these different markets, I think blockchain gives us a lot of flexibility, but we need to be compliant, and we need
Yeah.
to actually combine the traditional financial institutions like banks with our solutions. So to be able to do that, we have actually partners in all over the world. In
Hmm.
fact, you mentioned one of them is Transact, and another partner is Bridge, for instance. Like Bridge just acquired by Stripe, so Stripe now is our partner in the US.
Hmm.
And then we have tons of partners in all over the world, and these are all licensed and regulated partners. For instance, we are partnering with Circle, the issuers of USDC, to
Hmm.
actually educate people on digital dollar in countries like Turkey. So we are partnering with them. We are a Mastercard partner. Actually, Mastercard has a StartPath program, which is a kind of a startup partnership program,
Right.
and they pick seven companies each year from blockchain industry. And last year, we were one of the seven companies globally that they picked. And so, long story short, we are a purely technology company, but to be able to provide these products to our users, we need to partner with global brands and global
Yeah.
fintechs that are regulated, that have licensed, etc. And that's how we can actually operate in all these markets in a
Yeah.
compliant way.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And I think, of course, you have much more wealth of knowledge in fintech than I do, but from the little I know, there's also this big open finance mandate that's going around globally. So a lot of the big, financial companies are now looking more into technology solutions, and
Exactly.
whether it's internal or partner with other partners, that those conversations are actually happening now. While just a couple of years ago, that wasn't happening, and
Yes.
I think. Example of that is Nubank, for example, in LATAM. One of the reasons that they were able to see so much success is because the banks weren't necessarily looking for technology solutions and they were sticking to traditional ones, and people were sick and tired of it in Latin America because they were just being abused.
Exactly.
And so I think globally we're seeing now the shift as banks move, and which obviously is great for you guys as a technology company to make those partnerships,
Yeah.
and of course
Exactly.
let them deal with, like, you're compliant because you chose the right partners who know all the regulatory
Yeah, I
frameworks
mean, for
locally.
instance, like in Nubank, like it take them years to even expand to the next country
Yeah.
because of like they need to have like licenses, regulations, etc. Whatever. In our case, it took for us like I don't know, like a year to eventually expand into 40 different countries because of thanks to blockchain and technologies and now new embedded finance or licensed partners, etc. So it's a very different world
Hmm.
than 10 years ago, which is very exciting. So we can democratize all these financial solutions and provide them all over the world, which is great for everyone.
For sure. Yeah, and I think fintech. I think people, AI is getting a lot of the hype right now, and a lot of and rightfully so. Of course, those
Right.
technologies
Right.
are amazing, but I think fintech has been going under the radar, and these new solutions that are coming out are really gonna, taking the world by storm already. Um, and talking about that, actually, I know recently you guys raised $7 million from notable investors like Quiet Capital, who was their early Robinhood backer. So at least the people who are in fintech do recognize it. Maybe
Right.
general investment sentiments will start moving towards there very soon again. But how I guess when it comes to taking on investment, how did you guys position Cenoa, and I guess what's your approach to going to investors and raising
Right.
capital?
And I think it's really the pain point is huge because like when we talk about the pain points, financial pain points in the emerging economies, these are very big, audacious problems.
Yeah.
And so I think it coincided with a very huge and ambitious problem, huge market, huge TAM, etc., with a cutting edge technology because this non-custodial like wallets, all this anything in the blockchain world, like we are developing in on the cutting edge. Actually, like all the
Right.
products that we develop is on the cutting edge. So these are like very recent, very new technologies, and these technologies were not available like a year ago even.
Yeah.
Like these are
Hmm.
all like very new recent technologies. So basically a big problem, a cutting edge technology, and a great team. So we started with 4 co-founders, and in which each co-founder has a very specific experience in their fields. I mean, you were telling me that like I was launching products since 2007 in different companies, either my own startups or other hyper growth technology companies. So like that's my expertise. My co-founder Seçkin, he used to be SVP at BBVA in
Oh
Turkey,
wow.
Garanti BBVA, and he was leading the credit card operations. He was the CMO of all that part. So he has been, and before that he was in McKinsey, New York and Istanbul, focusing on fintechs, etc. So he has a huge experience. He's a big experience on the fintechs, financial, etc. And my other co-founders, one is an ex-Google, one's ex-Facebook engineers, one specific focuses on like the cryptography, etc., and others is focuses on the front end mobile apps, etc. So I think the founding team also has a very experienced senior team. So
Yeah.
when all these things came together, like a new technology, great founding team, great product, and a great problem, then the investors were excited. And
Hmm.
again, our vision is to really still the same, like the building the future of finance.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think one of the things I found very unique to you guys' platforms, and one of my biggest qualms actually with financial providers who use blockchain technology, is how you guys are simplifying it. Like, I think one of the biggest issues is that people in the crypto community will be like, oh yeah, people will sign up for wallets and they'll sign up, and they'll hold the wallets, and they'll go into all these different exchanges. Like, there's so much layers of complexity that, yes, somebody who's invested deep into crypto or into blockchain technology more on a broader scale, might know about, but but the average person will not want to deal with. And I think what's very interesting there is how you guys use blockchain technology and use the powerful benefits of blockchain technology while still simplifying the user experience, so that users might not even necessarily know, right, that that it's using those technologies, right? So I guess, how have you guys found that balance there of technical sophistication with user
It's
simplicity?
it's so difficult, and I'm gonna add one more layer. So
Yeah,
we need to be very innovative in terms of product, we need to be very innovative in terms of technology, and we need to be very innovative in terms of compliance as well, because
yeah,
we need to be compliant while doing all of these things. And it's really easier said than done. I mean, we are working very hard. Well, first of all, I mean, we start with, I think that everything starts with the user,
yeah,
right? So like we are actually talking to users every day, experimenting, doing bunch of user interviews, and trying to put a lot of feedback loops to the product so that like we can hear from our users as much as possible. So that's number one. So
hmm,
really trying to understand users and user behaviors, etc. So like that's the key. The second thing, I think a lot of blockchain companies, we realize that they love terminology. They love the blockchain language, but like no
right,
one understands the blockchain language. Like, and then, but we realized the rest of the world still understand financial products. So that's why like we really try to solve this problem or the UX problem with analogies. Hey, this is dollar but a digital dollar. Like, I mean,
right,
when you look at our app, like you don't see any blockchain terminology, but like we are really trying to explain it with the known analogies in the fintech world, and but slightly different. So this is like a dollar account but a digital dollar account, or this is a transfer but faster, or this is that. So it's, we're really
yeah,
trying to use that. And also in terms of product, in blockchain, since everything is new, we cannot build everything by ourselves. But the beauty of blockchain companies, a lot of products built just on top of each other.
yeah,
So finding the right partners was also very, very difficult for us. But like we spent, 3 years now to really finding the like right partners built on top. So that was also another step that we take very carefully. And the fourth thing is again the compliance. And right now, like we have arguably the best legal firm in the Europe, or one of the best legal firms in Europe, that kind of works almost as an extension to our own team. Like we have weekly
Hmm.
meetings since the inception. We have actually weekly meetings with them to innovate on the compliance layer, because that's also very important, like what we can actually say, what we cannot say, like
Yep.
what is custodial, what is non-custodial. So that was also we need to innovate a lot with them in the compliant layer. And when you add up all the innovations in product engineering, compliance, partnerships, etc., then finally we are actually able to launch a product which is very easy to understand for our users, but 100% non-custodial, and taking advantage, or like getting still the benefits, all the benefits from the blockchain world.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think, when well, I have two things that I think are very interesting there. The first one being one of the very unique things about blockchain is that, it like traditional software, a lot of it is actually open source. Like you can actually
Exactly.
see what the
Exactly.
what the foundation of a lot of blockchain technologies are, and that just makes it so those foundations are available and people can build on top of it. And they can either
Exactly.
choose to open source it or license technologies out. But either way, it's very interesting what that enables. But the second thing, what's very interesting there, and I think adds to the moat that you guys have, is that you guys are walking a very fine line, right? And in finance, of course, we've seen we've seen a lot of people who don't necessarily do that, and they can ride that ship for maybe a little bit, but eventually it ends up catching up with them. So I think what's very interesting, I commend you guys for doing, is you guys are walking that line between you know creating new products, but also making sure you're compliant alongside every single step, because you guys are building a company that's not supposed to last for 1 or 2 years. It's supposed to
Yeah.
last for a long, long time, right? And these
Exactly.
are the elements that need to come together for that, especially in the financial world. Um,
Exactly.
and so that's very, very exciting.
And also one more thing maybe I need to add is like the important problem, because if the pain point is big enough, then users have more motivation to learn, understand, listen, etc. And I think that's the missing piece. So
Hmm.
that's why I think innovation will come from the emerging economies rather than the West developed economies, because people are more willing to listen or willing to
Yeah.
learn because they have a bigger problem.
And you're not. I think one of the bigger issues in finance in general, in traditional finance, is typically they try to make things more complex than they are,
Exactly.
because they get to sell more products and they basically thrive on fear and the unknown. But in this case, you guys' pain point is so pertinent that you don't need to do that. Like, you can be very upfront with your customers and try to actually educate them along the way. But the actual value of your technology is so great that it's there's a lot of value anyway to that. And I think that's something
Exactly.
that's will disrupt traditional finance, because typically, like, yeah, you'll hear stuff like if you try to understand the 2008 recession crisis, you'll start getting all these analogies and terms thrown in your way, and you're gonna be like, what is going on? But if you actually just break it down and really spend like a good hour or two just understanding what it means, it's actually very straightforward. It's just they throw these analogies to make it very complex.
I was going to say, so actually the reason why our name is Cenoa is
Yeah.
actually it's a Turkish word. It's in Turkish. It's called Genoa,
Okay.
and Genoa is the city, according to the Economist, the magazine. Genoa is the city where the very first bank in the world established.
Right. In Italy. Yes.
Yes, so that's how, like, that's the motivation. And when you think about it, the basics of the banking is still the same.
Hmm.
At the end of the day, you are either moving money from one place to another, or you are actually distributing the risk, or
Yep.
you are distributing funds. So
Hmm.
that's it. So either you are distributing the risk in terms of like giving credits, etc., or you are moving money. That's it. So the basics still the same. So that's why I agree. Like in the crisis in 2008, like it all happened maybe because it got too complicated, that so that like people wouldn't understand, and then all of a sudden it's crashed. But at the same time, like what we believe is the basics are still the same, and we
Yeah.
can still deliver these basics with the latest technologies without complicating things, as simple as hundreds of years ago or centuries ago, where the very first bank was established in Genoa, and that's why actually our name comes after that. So basic finance, basic use cases still the same with the latest cutting edge technologies.
Awesome. Well, I know before the podcast, I briefly mentioned I'm a history nerd, so I really love the name now because that's a very, very awesome callback back to history. But leaving the past and talking about the future, actually, of course, you guys have a lot of plans for future growth as well. And you plan to add a US dollar based debit card and invoice financing very, very soon here as well. So I guess like I know you can't touch on everything here, but like what is the process of rolling out those
Yeah.
products and those features out?
I mean, I think the debit card right now, like we actually launched a debit card with a partner, but we
Hmm.
want to actually launch our own native debit card soon. And the reason is simple, because again, like we listen to our customers, and right now our customers can get payments through us, get their dollars in our app, and then they can earn yield on our app. They can transfer money on our app, but they also want to just make payments. They just like don't want to withdraw money to another bank. They just want to spend this money within our app in a very native way. So that's why the digital dollar debit card is something that we are working on, and it's we consistently hear from our customers.
Hmm.
And the other thing is the invoice financing is very important, because working capital is very important for especially exporters,
Yeah.
because these people work with inventory, and they get paid, not I mean sometimes their payments get delayed. So therefore, it's very important for them to provide the working capital. They can actually sell more, etc. So that's the invoice financing part. Again, like we cannot actually give the financing, because we are not a financial company, we are a technology company, but we are actually looking for partners,
Right.
so that like we can distribute their loans or credits to our customers, which we have a lot of information. We know when are gonna get paid, we know like how much they're gonna get paid, etc. So like we actually have perfect information. We just need our
Yeah.
partners to innovate again further to actually provide loans on blockchain with all this technology. So it's there will be another innovation soon. Just stay tuned.
Well, that's a request for anybody listening. If you are in finance and you want to make the jump and you are making the jump, please feel free to reach out.
Exactly.
And but like I mentioned, I think with open finance, the doors have really been unlocked, right? And so maybe we haven't made the jump yet to blockchain for financing, but I know in general it's become much easier for startups to find partners to have financing within their platforms. So I'm sure that jump will come very, very soon. And you know, I'm very enthralled actually with this product. I've learned so much through this podcast, and I truly believe, you guys are gonna, serve millions and millions of customers very, very soon, and potentially even billions in the next, 5 to 10 years, just based on
That's
the
the
trajectory
goal.
you guys
Yeah,
are going.
that's the
Um,
goal.
and I guess you've obviously worked at high growth startups before, but like when you think about that scale, I know that you still have a couple of years maybe before you have to think about that, but you know what do you think your biggest challenges are of achieving something at that scale?
Wow, there are a lot. Actually, like that's like I can tell you that. For instance, I give examples from my time at Getir.
Yeah.
When I was Getir, actually, the moment I joined and the moment I left, between those 2 points, we grew 20x
Hmm.
in terms of valuation, in terms of like the customer numbers, in terms of the company size, employees, in terms of everything. Basically,
Right.
we grew 20x, and I mean, hyper growth definitely has a lot of challenges in terms of like how to hire the right people, because like when you're a small team, you are like Spartans, like you can just get the best and brightest, and then like you build amazing things. But when you grow, like how do you actually keep up with that quality, how do you keep up with the culture, etc. So that's a big challenge. And when you grow that rapidly, the stuff tend to break break down,
Yeah.
or
Yep.
like, and then especially like during Getir, like when I was, so basically I started the product management team at Getir. Before that there was no product, like a modern product management, let's put it this way. And therefore we also changed the infrastructure from the monolith system to a product based engineering system.
Mm-hmm.
And that was so hard because it was kind of like I mean, imagine a Formula One racing. You are going so fast, but at the same time you are fixing the engine, or you are changing the engine as you are racing. So it
Yeah.
was something like that. You are changing the engine in a race car as you are racing. Definitely a lot of hard work, a lot of blood, tears, sweat.
Yeah.
But it's a fun challenge, because when there's a huge market pull, like when there's a huge demand, um yes, it's hard, but I prefer those kind of problems than there's no demand problems.
Yep.
Because in
100%.
some cases, like there's just no demand and there's nothing to do. But in other cases, there's huge pull, there's huge demand, and you just need to figure things out on the fly. Yes, it's very challenging. It's like I remember some days working even 20 hours a day,
Mm-hmm.
very stressful, at the same time very difficult in many ways, like very tiring, exhausting, very close to burnout in many moments, but still I prefer those kind of challenges than no demand
Yeah.
challenges.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Well, I'm convinced. I gotta go sign up for a Cenoa account if I can. But before I let you go, at least for this podcast, before I go sign up for an account, I have two last questions for you. The
Yes.
first one being, is there a book that you recommend us reading or checking out?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I love biographies. For
Mm-hmm,
me, I think it's very inspiring to really read people's lives, and especially like I love Walter Isaacson's biographies on Leonardo da Vinci
mm-hmm,
and Steve Jobs and Elon Musk.
mm-hmm.
And I think it's great to just like see how these people thought, like their thinking process, etc. It's so inspiring for me. So I think for me, recommendations, especially for entrepreneurs, I think biographies are a great source. And on the company culture, just like an additional, because it's so different than anyone else, is the Let My People Go Surfing
I
from the
haven't heard of that.
founder of Patagonia. I
Okay.
think Patagonia is a great brand and great company in general for many reasons, and the philosophy behind it is actually very different than many countries that we see. So I think it was very refreshing for me to read that book as well. So that will be also my bonus recommendation.
Awesome, awesome. Well, Steve Jobs' biography was one of the, I know it's very on the nose, but it was one of the really inspirational books when I was a kid. So I loved reading it, and I'm totally with you. I love biographies as well, and it's really awesome. Coming back to what you mentioned earlier in the podcast, it's actually really great that you got to see the guy. That's I wish. um, but yeah, I guess the last question that I had is just, I know we alluded to with future growth, but like, what are the next steps for you and Sanoa? What can we look forward to?
I mean, for me, I hope I keep building Cenoa for the rest of my career. Really,
Mm-hmm,
that's the goal. Because like I definitely see that like it could be a company that could actually huge impact for decades. So that's my hope. And for Cenoa, again, I think next steps right now, we focus on these user groups, especially for exporters, freelancers, digital nomads, etc. Like these kind of user groups. I think that's our focus. But eventually, the next steps is really to build the future of finance, enabling, leveraging blockchain technologies, latest technologies like blockchain and AI, and really democratizing these products and giving these to people in emerging economies where the need is the biggest. So that's still next steps. I mean, I know I mentioned that before, but like
Yeah.
still the same.
Well, you gotta be one track minded. You gotta know what you know exactly what your customers need and what you guys need to do, and you're executing on it. So that makes a lot of sense. Well, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. Really enjoyed this conversation, and for everyone
Thank you,
listening, thank
David.
you
It
so much.
was very fun for me as well. Thank you.
Thank you for everyone tuning in. Till next one.